Here is Roger calling from Toronto. Roger, is Toronto safe for cycling? What do you think?
I think it's fairly safe if you're conscious of what's going on around you all times.
Yeah.
I've been riding a bike. I've never owned a car in my life. I live downtown for the reason that I can use the public transit and ride my bike. I have the one concern I have is we want to encourage people to ride bikes. It's better for the air and everything like that.
You got it.
But I've had 3 bikes stolen.
Yeah.
I locked them up with locks. I had one stolen right in front of the police station almost. I locked them up with locks. I come back a half hour later, the bike's gone. And I was thinking, why aren't the police putting GPS's units in some bikes, put them out there for bait, and catch these bastards, you know? I can't see why the police are not enforcing these, getting these bike thieves off our streets. It's sickening. And I just wanted to mention, too, about riding on the sidewalk. I've been fined for riding on the sidewalk.
Oh, you have, eh? Yeah?
Yeah, I have. I had to pay a fine for riding on the sidewalk. It was, I still ride on the sidewalk when I find it's necessary for my own safety.
Yeah.
I was on Lawrence one time, riding across Lawrence. The cars were going, I don't know how fast, but enough to kill me.
Yeah.
I look down the sidewalk. I see no one on the sidewalk for a mile. I can see a mile down the sidewalk. I see no pedestrians at all. Am I going to ride on the road and risk my life with these guys missing me by inches going 60 miles an hour? I don't think so.
You're going to risk a ticket, just like a lot of other people do.
I'm going to risk a ticket anytime when my life is in danger. I go on the sidewalk. If I come to some pedestrians, I slow down to the speed they're walking at, or I get off my bike, I walk around them. It's common sense.
Yeah.
This is the stupid part of it. There's some idiots who ride through a crowded sidewalk on a bike quickly. Well, nobody with common sense is going to do that.
But the real dangerous thing is, excuse me, when they when they come to a street, they'll ride across the street too.
No, I wouldn't do that either.
Yeah, I know, but I mean that's that's a pretty dangerous situation.
I know. There's people that just don't use common sense, and that's the problem. I mean, what's wrong with people? Use your common sense. You're not going to endanger people, and you're not going to endanger your own life.
Roger, thank you very much.
Okay.
Roger's got 2 things mainly. He's saying, I'm going to ride on the sidewalk because it might save my life. Hard to argue with that pragmatic thought. Also, bike theft. Maybe that prevents, discourages a lot of people from riding their bikes anywhere and lashing them up to one of those thingies. They're not called thingies. What are they called?
Posts. Bike posts, yes.
Posts, yeah. Well, that's about it. All right. Because the bike theft incidents are so high.
They are, and it's probably one statistic that we don't want to be number 1 or number 2 in the country, respectively. But
are we?
I think right now, I think we're in the top. We're in the top 5 or 6. I think Fred can account for that. But he brings up a couple of things, and we're going to keep coming back to that this evening. Is bike education and motor vehicles, education as well. In terms of the bike storage, we are moving away from our bike lockers gradually over the next few years, and moving into permanent bike stations, which are our swipe card permanent bike storage facilities.
Where you put the whole bike in.
You put your bike in there. It's secured and it's secure.
Yeah. What happens to all the bikes that get stolen? Where do they go? Do you know, Fred?
There are a few known shops in the city that tend to sell them, and for a while the police had a good system for following up on that and trying to crack down. I think it's not being as enforced as much. But I want to pick up on the point about bait bikes. That's something that the University of Toronto tried out last year, doing exactly that, putting tracking devices in the bikes, putting them sort of in vulnerable positions, and then tracking them later and charging.
How did that work out?
I know it was really successful, and the City of Toronto police like the idea, and I know they're looking into trying it.
Because if you could add some deterrent value, I mean, I don't think anybody who steals a bike really thinks, A, they're going to be caught, and B, it's considered much of a serious offense. But if they knew for sure they were going to be caught, they might think differently. Do you think, Evelyn?
Well, they might. I know a lot of our members, when they're out cycling, they'll have a bike that they'll ride in the city, or that they might ride to work, and it's just hand-me-down, whatever.
A beater bike.
A beater bike.
Yeah.
And then when they go out cycling, either out of the city or on our social group rides, then they have their road bikes and their nice bikes. But yeah, you have to have both if you're going to be in Toronto.
Do you have 2 bikes like that? Do you have 2 bikes?
No, I only ride a beater.
You only ride a beater.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's important to raise the fact that the Toronto Police Services do have an online registration or a mail-in
Yeah.
registration where you can drop in, register your serial number, so that if your bike
So
is
they might be
stolen-
able to trace it. Yeah.
Well, they do recover an extraordinary amount of bicycles. I've
Yeah.
seen footage. You can look it up on YouTube if you want to, of the storage facility, and there's
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of bicycles there that are unclaimed.
Does that mean a lot of the bicycles are stolen just so somebody can get from A to B? I mean, is this just not serious bike theft, as it were, but just
I think that there is
stealing
some
a bike?
organized, serious bike theft in Toronto, and as well as, just petty thievery that happens on the
Casual
street.
theft,
Yeah.
I guess you might call it.
Yeah, and most of that will happen because people either haven't locked properly or aren't using the correct locks. The thieves are pretty smart, and they can figure out new locks. So you have to sort of keep on top of the technology and understand that a cable lock isn't going to do it if you're downtown Toronto.
Are there any good locks these days?
Yeah, Margaret's right. People who are using...
Remember the ones where somebody figured out you could open them up with a pen,
With a
ballpoint
pen,
pen?
yeah.
And they were supposed to, and with the great huge cable, but you can open it up with a ballpoint pen?
Yeah.
No, nowadays some people who are riding more low-end bikes or beater bikes, their
Yeah.
lock might cost more than their actual bike.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think that's...
But it's worth it because they can rely on the fact that their bike's going to be outside when
Well,
they
the
go to
big
use
thing
it.
about having your bike stolen as well, if you're using it for transportation, is you've just lost your transportation.
Yeah.
You're stranded. That's the problem. It's like your car breaking down, right? Or your car being stolen, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think instead of having better locks, though, we can prevent bikes being stolen by having better storage facilities. I think we're probably better off as well.
That would certainly, yeah. Okay. All right, we'll talk more about that and take many more of your calls right after this break, so don't go away. Okay, we're back and we're asking if Toronto is safe for cycling. Let's ask Gilles from East York. Is Toronto safe for cycling? What do you think?
No, it's not.
Not.
People don't realize. Okay, we have the bike lanes on the Danforth and a couple
Yeah.
of bike lanes, but that's mostly used for during rush hour, and because after that the bike lane doesn't exist, the cars are parked there, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's really safety in Toronto is just how astute a cyclist is. Just want to bring up something also about the education for cyclists versus education for drivers, and
All right.
we're covered by the Highway Traffic Act. If I do anything, my car insurance goes up.
That's right.
Okay, and people aren't aware of this. When you're riding a bike, if you cross a red light and a cop gives you a ticket, it goes on your driver's license. It's not just like a small ticket. If you're in a bike accident and you caused it, it's your car insurance that's going up.
Yeah.
And because we have a no-fault insurance plan in Ontario, if I get run over by a car,
Yeah.
it's my car insurance that's going to be paying for my bike.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility as a cyclist. For
Well,
safe-
more so than used to be just a few years ago. Wouldn't you say? Yeah, that's really
way
improved.
more.
Yeah.
I ride in Toronto all the time. We're a group of friends. We ride for the pleasure of it on weekends.
Uh-huh.
I can't count the times that we've nearly been run over by drivers not paying attention to their right-hand side when they're turning, when they're pulling over, taxi drivers. Now, the other thing, you talk about a lot of aggressive riders.
Yeah.
There's a small group of aggressive riders. Mostly they're the couriers downtown
That's right.
that are riding on the sidewalk way too fast, so on and so forth. But most of the weekend riders and people out there just beating around on their bike are not aggressive riders. And, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see the cops starting to pull over cars when you almost get run over. But there's never a police officer when you need one. I was riding along the Harbourfront. A car suddenly decided he was going to do a right-hand turn. I put my brakes. I flipped over my handlebars.
Oh, man.
I'm clipped into my pedals. I get up, and the guy goes and parks his car. Never even noticed that he almost ran me over.
Good
but that's
grief.
the reality of being a cyclist.
And if you'd run into his car and put a dent in it, he'd be angry at you.
Yeah, and I'd have to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is we're losing a lot of money in terms of tourism dollars. There's lots of money for tourism for cyclists.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have a velodrome in Toronto. We don't have a velodrome in Toronto. Why? There'd be tons of people that want to use that. You could start races, so on and so forth. You could develop a whole industry. But you know what? Toronto